Okay, wait. Now, oh, freaking okay. My mic. Oh my. I can never enter in on stream. I can never enter in on stream. Okay. Okay. Let me hold on. All right. Is this better? Oh, that's freaking loud. Sorry. Okay. Wait. Okay. I'm so professional, guys. All right. Let me see. Maybe I should have probably streamed this a little bit later, but I don't know. It's because I know not a lot of people can really watch it like this time of day. But I did want to have like the VOD of the rebuttal at least a little bit separate. and then we can play, some goofy fun Genshin stuff while I try to get Primo Gems, because I'm getting that Scarlet Staff no matter what. And I'm gonna cry if I don't, because I only got up to the 50-50 pay. I'm kind of scared. So it's that. But I on a serious note though, I did see that she was getting like quite a bit of like abusive comments and stuff. Don't do that. Alright, that shit's awful. I don't condone it. If you try to do that in my name, stop it. Knock it off. Alright. But I was over dramatic on like the first stream, just for sake of like entertainment, but I actually did want to be more serious with this one and explain as to why like the takes were received so poorly, at least from my perspective. I tried to like, I was like so late because I was trying to like clean my glasses, but then I just like, all they did was just get smudged more, so that didn't work. So hopefully, let me see if I can like put the monitor a little bit lower on the brightness. What the fuck did I put that? Let me see if I can like fix with the settings real quick. Okay. Yeah, let me put the brightness down. Alright. Are my mods are them able to show up? I don't think so. I think again it's because of the time of day that the stream is at. I didn't want to like leave it to wait though. I did watch it, but hold on. I'll transition over into the actual video. Okay. Alright, I had the wrong audio input, sorry. Anyways, I did want to like actually preface this by this. I did watch the follow-up video in advance. I have some notes, like I typed on a Google Doc off to the side on my iPad right here, because I wanted to actually be more collected and not like over dramatic just for the sake of like entertainment on stream. I'm gonna try one more time to like fucking clean my glasses. Hold on. It's like driving me insane. Okay. Dude, this is so bad. Okay, wait, I think I almost got it. Alright. So I wanted to actually be a little bit more serious with covering this. Because it's still blurry shit. Okay, that's like the best it's gonna be right now. I have to just be okay with it. Hold on. Yeah, okay, that's just gonna be alright. I just gotta deal with it. Okay. So I wanted to be actually a bit more serious with this and be like level-headed and non-incendiary. I will say this. It must suck to have like the whole internet choosing you as the person in the stocks throwing tomatoes at for the week, okay? All right, the human brain can't even handle like 20 people in person, all right, before it gets overwhelmed for something like that, let alone thousands of people on the internet. That is undoubtedly extremely stressful, and I don't fault her for not wanting to ever touch the Genshin fandom like in public ever again. That is, yeah, it's that's kind of reasonable, man. After this, um, second, do not go to her channel. Do not try to contact her and harass her. Don't do any of that shit. All right. Um, she's been getting like gore, I think, sent to her, and like DMs telling her she should kill herself and everything like that. And that's I hate that like so much. Um, it's just so unnecessary and it's so uncalled for. It doesn't matter. These are fictional characters at the end of the day. All right. It doesn't. None of the takes ever warrant that. I want to make that clear. Behind that avatar is a person, just like how behind, like, this VTuber model that it uses a person. And so it's very easy to just, dehumanize like the person just by the avatar and send them like abusive shit. And that's like so common. It's become so common on the internet nowadays, and that's just not right. So I'll say that again. I'll probably say it throughout the stream. Um. Okay. Let me see what else. Those are all pretty much the notes. So I have the other clips of Linnea's trailer and parts of Nefer's quest, and I have some notes on the side. I am not a I'm not a historian. I'm not a professional or an academic in the field. It just happens to be what I'm studying. Um, so like I can't claim to like be an authority in that way. I can only just claim that yeah, this is something that like I study within my like degree. I haven't earned it yet, and I just really really like history. So it's it's like informed by that, but it's not. I don't have any actual credentials. I'm not gonna try to misinterpret or not misinterpret, misrepresent myself as like an actual authority. And I'm not. I just like reading about history and I like studying it, and that's why I went into it as my major. Um, with some of the perspectives, of just like my ethnic background being so on my dad's side I'm a Latino, and that's why I really like Natlan, and that's why I just do not agree with the takes like a lot. um, and there's a few points about Nefer's quest and like the prejudice she faces in the academia that I'll bring up. But everything actually should be here in this folder. If not, I'll have to probably download it and then put it on the media player, but that shouldn't take too long. Alright, so just prefacing that, let's just get into the video. Let me take it off the always on top screen. Alright.
Hi. So this is going to be a sort of addendum to my Genshin video. I'm going to do very minimal editing here because I want to get this out relatively quickly. It's already taken long enough. The thing I got the
Okay, that's the first mistake here. It really maybe if she wants to make like a longer like response later, that's okay, and she just wants to get out something quick. I really don't think that rushing like this video out really really helps. It seems like the first video was kind of also rushed, trying to get to release it before Snezhnaya, and I think maybe a post would have been better instead of like a full out video, because it's in turn caused another wave of harassment her way, which I don't condone again. So knock that fucking shit off, all right? I don't like seeing that. Oh, sorry about that. Let me. Huh? What did I do? No, don't do full screen. Damn it. Okay, we're back. But that I think is like the first mistake here, is that you already had like some issues with just getting the initial video out so quickly without like properly reading the lore and everything like that. And I think that this probably is not like the best thing, but you already posted it, and so I'll just have my thoughts about it. Um, okay.
The most backlash for by far was my thoughts on Linnea. I definitely want to apologize for the harsh tone I took when talking about her. I wrote that section in an angry state of mind and I should have edited it to be a bit more objective. I understand that a lot of people think I'm ableist now because of the way that I spoke about a character that people feel is autism coded. Yes, I know that people on the autism spectrum may have a difficult time picking up on social cues or personal space, and that Linnea struggles with both of these. Yes, I know about special interests and that Linnea's has to do with wildlife. I never meant to diminish people with autism, and if I hurt you with my words, I'm so sorry for that. I just want to put my thoughts into a little bit more context.
Okay. I think that's important right there. Is that none of these takes were ever done maliciously, all right, to try to invalidate anybody or to like try to say, oh, if you do this, you're like a creep or a pedophile or whatever like that. I'm taking advantage of the fact that I'm not monetized on YouTube, so I can say these words without like the stupid YouTube censorship. But it's so I recognize there it's not intentional. I can't accept your apology because I don't have autism. At least I've not been diagnosed. I actually do suspect I may be on the spectrum there, but I do have ADHD, so I do understand like the aspects of just neurodivergence and feeling just inherently different. Um, and there is quite a bit of overlap between the two, but I don't have autism, so I'm not gonna like try to take that or accept that apology if it wasn't directed to me. Um, but at least acknowledged it that it wasn't like malicious or anything like that. I think that's the first good step.
First off, I went to school to become a teacher. I have a bachelor's degree in early childhood education, so I'm familiar with different disabilities and what those look like for
Okay, this is gonna sound a little bit mean, but um, I've tried to like write it down the best way to phrase it, but even if you've like gone and you've gotten education in early child development and you've studied it and have a bachelor's degree in it, and she mentioned that she actually works with children with various disabilities and on the spectrum of neurodivergence, not just autism, I'm assuming, just by the way it's worded. um that does not make you immune to having ableist takes or implicit biases that are ableist that end up showing up in like how you talk, and it's not necessarily your fault because it's conditioned into us. um at a societal level, like a whole, you know it's just something that's just kind of like subliminally like taught into us. But learning to recognize it and then try to learn from it is what is super important here.
students. I knew
So let me rewind 10 seconds.
text. First off, I went to school to become a teacher. I have a bachelor's degree in early childhood education, so I'm familiar with different disabilities and what those look like for students. I knew all of this when I wrote the video. Though I'm not currently a teacher, I work with students at different ability levels regularly at my job. Linnea frustrates me as a representation of the autism spectrum because her portrayal aligns a lot with portrayals of creep or pervert characters in anime. The thing that bothers me especially is the grabby hands that she does in the trailer, which is why I put her on screen with this character from Ace Attorney, who
Okay, this I think is like the main crux of like why people are so upset. It's the how did you get from like
a teacher, I work with students at different ability levels regularly at my job. Linnea frustrates me as a representation of the autism spectrum because her portrayal aligns a lot with portrayals of creep or pervert characters in anime. The thing that bothers me especially is the
grabby hands? So aside from just the outward stretched motion of the hands, it's just the jump all the way to creep and pervert characters from anime. It just seems like a bridge that I wasn't connected to and I wasn't expecting. And a lot of people weren't, especially those who relate to Linnea, and those who do actually sometimes struggle to forget boundaries when it comes to things like touch. Um, and then you like outwardly criticize the character that they relate with. It can feel very hurtful and like calling like that person like a pervert. That's not what you're saying. And I understand that. Let me say that. Let me clarify that. But that's probably why as to how this is getting so much backlash, because this take is so, I think, extreme for a lot of people. Um and then like further kind of cementing it with the creepy Ace Attorney character is not helping either. Um, because you're essentially, well, you did. You equated the two because that was your stance. So let's continue.
Hands that she does in the trailer, which is why I put her on screen with this character from Ace Attorney, who is explicitly supposed to be creepy. That's something specifically I would want to see changed, because to me, it felt ableist to portray her with these predatory mannerisms.
Okay. Put a pin in that.
When they could have just had her be fascinated with the Melu scenes without doing stuff like that. This comes down to agency, like I said in the video. Linnea has no control over how she's represented because she's not real. I've literally had college professors hammer into my head that characters are products and reflections of their authors. And
okay. Likewise, so authors influence, characters are products of the author, and the author's environment and their mindset. In the same way, an interpretation of a character is also the product of the reader or the viewer's environment and their mind and all of their life experiences. This is why, you can have characters like A and Skara have two very wildly different receptions from the fandom. Some find him extremely relatable and understand his arc, or some find A extremely relatable with wanting to not change anything and a depression that came out of that. And other people think that both of them are irredeemable and evil, and have done just and should not ever be redeemed within the story. It's so this point I think this is where I'm having to disconnect, is how did you still connect the dots to Linnea being predatory apart, and I'll get into the actual clips, because the clips, at least to me, don't indicate that at all, and combined with just the anger and the vitriol of the delivery, both the writing of the script and then the delivery of it when recording and then editing it, it comes off as really bad. And let me see if I can put this. So if characters are products of the author, also their interpretation is also influenced by the viewer. And I think maybe this is why if you're more aware of negative stereotypes that harm neurodivergent people, maybe your mind may have jumped to a more extreme problematic interpretation of her just sometimes losing control when she wants to pet something that's fluffy or piques her interest. The equating of that to child predation, especially in our current day political climate, and just a lot of stuff that's happening on in the news, it comes off as distasteful at best. And the association of having a character who, and this is real, there are people who struggle sometimes with reading social cues and maybe reaching out to pet a dog, or when it's another person, maybe hugging them without actually asking for it. Yes, it hurts the person, but it doesn't automatically make them a child predator. I don't know how you got there, man. So let's just
that they are not autonomous and should not be discussed as such. It's instead a reflection on Hoyo that they decided to portray her that way.
So, okay. This is how, okay, I have the clip of her, of the different scenes that have this, where I think you're getting it from, at least. Hi, Cassie, yeah, so I'm going over the video right now. So, let me see. Okay, so this clip right here is, Linnea's, special character interaction with the Melusine.
So this is going to be a sort of addendum to my Genshin.
Ugh, I hate that, trying to navigate. Okay. So this is Linnea meeting Memory and Seymour. This is one of the special character interactions. I don't have Linnea, and I don't know if this was a character anecdote, but this is recorded on YouTube and then uploaded, and I downloaded it because I knew I was going to dox myself if I didn't. If I didn't take it off the platform, because I always click off the wrong thing and then I expose my whole window. So anyways, but this is one of the scenes. So my point here is that Linnea does, get too excited, and she crosses the boundaries of not wanting to be touched, but then she apologizes and she feels like shame and guilt about it, and she doesn't do it again. Um, at least within like the same scene. Of course, like when you're trying to break like a habit, or if you get excited, it can you can have like lapses in your self control, but it doesn't make it like the same as child predation. That's like the main issue I see here. Anyway, so let's watch the scene. Oh wait, is it not voice? Oh, I guess it's not voice. Okay, so then okay, wait, let me read it then. If anybody's watching this while doing another task, because I do that too when I'm reading. Anyways, Lena, basically she's in Nodcry. She's in like exploring, I guess, and she sees the Melazine, Memory, and Samurai. I actually haven't met them. I think they're part of like a request or something like that. Oh, hi, Savvy. Yeah, we're doing a reaction. And so Linnea approaches, and she's like, "Huh? Is that a Melazine?" And then she gets excited because Melazines look like stuffed animals that are like fuzzy. And the only thing they have in common with like children is that they're short. They even have muzzles, man. It's trying to figure out what's going on. Oh, hi, Kesha. It was because I reacted to like a video that was like critiquing Genshin, but just I thought had horrible takes, and then the creator made like a follow-up. So I'm trying to I was over dramatic with that first reaction, but I wanted to actually seriously engage with why the takes were received so poorly, because they ended up like doubling down. I think I'm pretty much all the takes in this like follow-up video. Anyways, so the Melazine, it looks like a stuffed animal. Like, and so she just gets excited. So she's like, "Whoa, a real Melazine." He's like, "Aw, such a tiny and adorable little Melazine." Wow, the dialogue goes by really slow, and the Melazine's like, who are you?" It's like, may I touch you? I've always wondered what a Melazine like you feels like." So she actually asks something so cute and clever. "Are you smooth? Are you soft? Or maybe fluffy? Don't be scared, I just want to give you a little..." And so this is where she gets too excited. And then she ends up like saying stuff that probably should just really stay in her head. But again, it's in context of just wanting to pet the Melazine because they look like a furry little creature. Like, it's so... And the comedic timing of the scene frames this as Linnea's fault. She doesn't mean to be like malicious about it. She's just excited to pet the Melazine. And then the robot dog over there even almost like shoots her. He says, "Please mind your conduct, miss, and refrain from what is it, breaking a statute?" Or frick, it went by fast. "Unauthorized physical contact may lead to misunderstandings and could carry serious legal consequences." So it even says that, like, so the scene establishes that this is like not acceptable, even if it's like not done intentionally. Oh, sorry, the little bar thing is like in the way. Go away. Can it go away? It's gonna go away? Okay, here it is. "Including imprisonment for over 3 years and permanent prohibition from entry." It's like, a machine that moves and talks. My apologies. She was just too adorable and I got carried away. Wait, why did it go by so fucking fast? Dude, the guy who was recording this. Okay. She's a chewable girl, and I just got carried away. "I'm the advisor working for the Adventurers Guild. I promise I'm not a weirdo." So this is like... This is probably like the most awkward she gets with a character interaction. So this seems like a pretty like relatable experience to those who are neurodivergent, is just saying something just out of excitement, or breaching a boundary, or asking something you shouldn't have asked, and then like kind of recoiling and realizing, oh right, shit, that might have looked weird to the other person. And that kind of nervousness and the shame you feel about it. So it's the equating all of those experiences that real people who struggle with autism, like, do have, and equating it with child predation. It doesn't come off right. Um, and while what really was like the final nail in the coffin here, I'll go to the next scenes after this, but what is the final nail in the coffin here is that, the low-end thirst. I get it, low-end's hot, but it is the uneven standard to which you hold these two characters to. And that is what comes off as not only ableist but also misogynistic, is holding like the female characters to be these perfect moral representations. And representation is important, but low end also, like, and you used footage in your video. You used footage from Lowen's character, like, demo, like his trailer. So by that point, his character teaser was already out, and he like drugs people like by spiking their drinks in those videos. And if you had to watch the character trailer, take a clip of it, put it in the video, edit it, and then presumably rewatch it however many times when you were editing the video, and you still like said that face card is diabolical while holding Linnea to this like standard. That is what people are pretty like ticked off about. Negative individuals engaged in suspicious. Oh fuck! It is going by so fast. This guy needs to like. You shouldn't just go calling people weirdos. And then the Melusine is like, okay, she's not like, like the abusive creeps. She just means well. She's just a little awkward because that's what having neurodivergence or being on the spectrum does. I forgot this wasn't voiced. I'm a traveling painter from Fontaine. This is Seymour. He's a good friend of mine. I expect to meet anyone else here. We're here to gather inspiration too. To gather inspiration. Let me think. Suppose adding your entries to my archive counts, right? And then to talk about the whale. Maybe was it my say? I freaking don't know. Fostering whale really brings good luck. Oh, chicken! It's going by so fast. Okay. I wanted to like play the whole scene though, and so she says right here, I know I won't touch anything without permission. So she's apologizing. She feels remorse for it. It is never presented as something okay to do, or like, that it does make people uncomfortable. But she apologizes for it, and the narrative shows that she's not malicious about doing it. It's just that she gets carried away when she's excited. Okay. So let's go to the next clip.
I really know you're.
Oh shit, that was fucking loud. Okay. Okay, so this is the scene where she wants to pet Paimon. Okay.
I really know your stuff. You're everything Paimon would expect from an Adventurers Guild advisor. Huh? What's the deal? Don't get so close. Traveler, there's something wrong with her.
Hold on, wait, sorry.
Actually, I was going to ask. Your little friend is so clever and cute. I love how she flies around, too. Can I pet her? Whoa! Stay back!
Okay, so the reason why she gets so excited about Paimon is because she floats. She doesn't dress like any of the children, like, NPCs in the game. The only thing she has in common is that she's small. She doesn't even talk like a child. She just has, like, a higher-pitched voice, which is, like, common with the anime thing. And this is, granted, I'll give you here, it's definitely, like, more comedic in tone, but then again, even her chasing around Paimon, you're holding Loen to not such a, like, moral standard, but you're holding Linnea to it, or, that phrased weird, okay. Why are you holding, like, Linnea to a higher, like, moral standard, but not, like, Loen, even though what he does is objectively worse than what's gonna happen, like, with this little clip?
Be afraid. I'm not gonna hurt you. Come on, come here.
So it's like the way she's chasing Paimon, it's kind of like when a kid sees a dog that they want to pet, or maybe like a service animal. And it's under that context. Like, Paimon is this weird, fantastical creature. She doesn't even register that she's like a child. Again, I think that's why people are like so upset. And everybody in Genshin has always referred to as like mascot or emergency food. That's like where the joke comes from. Nobody in this world like conceptualizes her as a child. Um she's cute. That's just supposed to be the thing. She just wants to like pet her because she's cute. But of course, that's a foundation violation, and then Aether gives her like a stern face and says, no, like, don't do that anymore, and then she apologizes.
I'm sorry. I got a little bit carried away again. My name's Linnea. I'm an advisor working for the Adventurers Guild. And I promise you, I am not some sort of weirdo. Let me make it up to you. You want something to eat? Here, try some midsummer tort. It's delicious. Phew! You gave Paimon a fright. Paimon's never met someone so, how to put this, enthusiastic as you. I was fighting to keep a lid on my curiosity during class, but then I just lost control.
So this explains as to why she got so excited over Paimon. So in the scene before, she was like kind of teaching this class about like adventuring tips and how to not die by eating like a poisonous mushroom. And Traveler and Paimon kind of walk in late and they sit in the back row. And so she must have spotted Paimon floating because, Paimon's very unique, and she must have like already tried to like rein in her excitement over something and just couldn't anymore. And then that's why she got so excited. So again, it's just, she just thinks Paimon's an interesting creature and is just curious about it. And she kind of forgets, she has to not just walk up and then try to ask to pet Paimon so aggressively. That's where this is coming from.
Anyway, let's get this back on track. Could you tell me your story? How did you two meet?
And what I like about this scene is that it doesn't, like, the comedic tone doesn't even frame Linnea as, like, a creep or a pervert. Like, it just says that, oh, she gets excited and then she kind of, like, forgets, social cues in that excitement. And when you're, like, piqued by curiosity, even Paimon, like, well, still kind of hesitant, just realizes, oh, she was just enthusiastic. It's nothing indicates that, like, they intend for her to be this, like, I don't know, just the like the Ace Attorney creepy character. It's just, it seems like such a stretch to me because when I'm watching this, granted this is like, clips, but even within the context of the story, it just doesn't, it doesn't compute as to how you got there. And so the other main one, well, let's finish this scene so I can prove I'm not cutting anything out. The only other way would be to like watch the whole, quest, but we can't really do that right here.
What? You fished this little cutie out of the sea? Can you tell me where? A visit to that beach is going right to the top of my bucket list.
One last thing.
Okay,
I'm sure the
so this is her character trailer. So it's not like the weird, like, not weird. It's not like the live 2D, like, teaser that comes out. So this is like the 3D trailer.
One last thing. I'm sure the adventurers would benefit from your expertise.
Sure thing! Just send it my way! Huh?
Oh!
Thanks!
Again, with Klee, a character who is actually a child, she doesn't try to, like, reach out to, like, pet Klee. You know what I mean? And in here, it's like a mushroom. Again, she gets excited.
Are the fungi too? The Encyclopedia Vividia Forest Fungi.
So it's info dumping, like how I did.
These green ones are actually completely hollow! Excuse us.
And then with here, okay, so I know that frame. I'll go to that frame. But here, the reason why she gets kind of like really enthusiastic and curious about Kirada and Sejuin is because they have the animalistic features. the cat's tail. She has a nekomata, so she has 2 tails, and she has cat ears. And so Season, she has like she's a melazine, as you know, by these like, I forget, are those ears or are they appendages, but she also looks more human. But she's doing this from the perspective of like being like, you know, like a cute fuzzy animal that she wants to just like, you know, learn more about.
Excuse us.
And then with this, like, I don't know how you get like creepy vibes from it. It just seems like somebody like, have you ever, it's like the want to like be in like a snuggle pile with a bunch of cats, and there's cats like at the bottom right here. Like that's what like is the fantasy, for lack of a better word, here, is that she wants like to like pet all these like fuzzy creatures that look like stuffed animals, like the melazines. And it's I don't get it. It's maybe with Kirara you can have a little bit of an argument because of like the heart tail, and like Kirara's like kind of butt is lifting up, but that seems to be more like a fan service thing about Kirara, not about Linnea. Um
A one-of-a-kind melazine.
and so like when like sometimes like how to explain this? It's like when you get like really really excited about something, then you kind of like, you know, your mask comes off like in full force, and then you kind of have to remember, oh right, I can't be like, I have to. How does this look from like the other person? So, so people who actually do struggle with like something like this, or like maybe they want to like pet somebody's dog, or like, so I had a lady once like reach out to like pet my hair when I was like a kid at Disneyland because it was like so fuzzy after it was buzz cut. It was still weird, but like it wasn't like it was not through this like malicious like lens. It's just her getting excited, and she just she totally forgets. And then it's again, it's like a more comedic tone. It's not suggesting that this is acceptable or is this normal. It's presenting her as the weird one. It's presenting Linnea as the person in the wrong. So when you like, you know, use that, to me, presenting like a comedic tone and presenting Linnea in the wrong is actually somewhat like affirming. It helps you like kind of poke fun at yourself, you know, because in real life, you know, when you have to get corrected, you know, when your mask falls off and you maybe say something that isn't really socially like correct, it can feel very, you know, cutting, for lack of a better word. It just, the immense shame that like comes from that, and it just built up year over year over year, it can be very intense. And so when you see like a fantasy character also make like the same mistakes as you do, granted because it's an anime fantasy, it's going to be a bit more exaggerated. People like that. They get comfort in knowing, okay, it's not just me who's had that experience where I had to maybe be like said, oh, like that isn't appropriate, and I can learn to laugh at it, you know, at the situation, at kind of the exaggeration of the situation, you know, through this exaggerated anime lens. And so like when you take something that like people have found comfort in, it and then like say equate it to child predation, that's like people are so baffled and why people got really angry. And it seems as if you're kind of going in just looking for like problems, and maybe that is informed, maybe that's informed by wanting good autism, you know, and neurodivergent representation. That's not, the intentions weren't bad. I don't think they were bad. I think you obviously really do care about this, and you want to do good and you want to help people. So maybe when you're going in with that mindset and you're trying to look for problems, because at this point I think you had expressed you had already been frustrated with Genshin since Natlan. So it just, perhaps that's why like you had such a jump in severity from social awkwardness and inappropriate, you know, boundaries, like when in regards to touch, to like child predation. Again, that leap is so extreme. and in wanting to like call out an ableist take, you ironically ended up perpetuating ableism by equating those common behaviors that and mistakes that people make to child predation. That's what people are like upset about, is that you've still equated those behaviors to something of that severity, which is something that real people struggle with. And found relatability in Linnea. See, she doesn't even have her hands stretched out. She's actually writing in her book. Here, I'll slow it down here. Or, I don't think... Can I even slow it down here? I don't know how to do it in Windows Media Player. Anyways, let me see.
A one-of-a-kind magazine!
Okay, wait. Let me see if I can pause for it. Okay, yeah, she's writing. She's writing in the book right here. She's not actually, like, chasing her with her hands stretched out. She's chasing her, trying to just write about Kirara, because she now just saw that Kirara can transform into a box and run away. And she's almost like the author from Journal number 3. She's just trying to, like, archive every single interesting thing that she knows because she doesn't want to forget about it. And she's, you know, she's just excited about it. And I don't, like, that leap is so huge. So here, we'll watch the rest of Linnea's trailer to see. Hi, Tough Tony. Yeah, I'm doing like a reaction to the follow-up vid, but I'm just showing like Linnea's trailer.
Linnea, look! Is that what I think it is? A rare breed of white capybara!
See, look, like the capybara, they're fuzzy, and they're like they can do like kind of humanoid-esque actions like drinking tea. That's what makes them cute. Okay, that heart wink. It's kind of weird. Not gonna lie, alright? But point still stands about the rest of the stuff and why people are angry. But I think it's just meant to be goofy. That she's so in love and enamored with animals that's like what it would be like, you know, to us, like in her head. That's like it's like a stupid Bishi boy, like, you know, winking at like the protagonist of an Otome game. Like, it's not actually like interpreted like that. It's just that's how like in love she is with animals. Not in that way, not in that creepy way, like just in love with knowing about animals and learning about them and wanting to pet them and kind of forgetting, oh right, like don't pet. It's like, you know, when you see like a tiger cub at a zoo, and you're like, oh my god, they look so cute and fluffy, I want to play with them, but you know if you ever try, like you're gonna get mauled by the mom, right? Like And so, yeah, so she gets into her curiosity, ends up leaving her into situations where she doesn't think things through. That's obviously it's extremely exaggerated, you know, falling off of a cliff. But that's something that like a lot of people, including myself, who are neurodivergent, you know, struggle with. It's just sometimes I get like really excited about something and I just like forget, oh right, there's consequences to like some of my actions that I can't like always just blindly pursue something. But I forget, and I do get embarrassed, and I you know, and I try to learn from it. And so when you like take like behaviors like that, even though they're exaggerated in this anime like sense, but the behaviors are still like real and behaviors that people relate to, and then you equate it to something like being a creepy pedo and then double down on it, it just leaves people with a very bad taste in their mouth. I'll be gonna do what I'm telling you today.
Huh? There it is!
Yes, she has to go to like the nest of like one of the birds.
A slate umbrella, Finch. Your hairdresser tricked me!
So that's what that is. Okay, so let's go back to the
Hi.
main point.
So this is going to be said in the I'm so kind as a way that an Archon could uphold no
Okay.
control of my job. Linnea frustrates me as a representation of the autism spectrum because her portrayal aligns a lot with portrayals of creep or pervert characters in
Yeah, again, I don't know how like this specific point her portrayal aligns with like creeper pervert characters. After watching like the clips, I just don't see it.
anime. The thing that bothers me especially is the grabby hands that she does in the trailer, which is why I put her on screen with this character from Ace Attorney who is explicitly supposed to be creepy. That's something specifically I would want to see changed because to me it felt ableist to portray her with these predatory mannerisms.
And then to me, equating very common behaviors that people with autism or who are neurodivergent struggle with and equating it that quickly with creepy perverts is ableist. So trying to call it ableism, you ended up perpetuating ableism. That's maybe like, and just because like, even if you like teach and you work with kids, you know, who have various, you know, kinds of disabilities and are on the spectrum, and you studied it, that does not make you immune from having like, you know, biases or saying things that perpetuate ableism. That's the main thing that people are upset about.
When they could have just had her be fascinated with the Melusines without doing stuff like that. This comes down to agency, like I said in the video. Linnea has no control over how she's represented because she's not real. I've literally had college professors hammer into my head that characters are products and reflections of their authors, and that they are not autonomous and should not be discussed as such.
And then again, like, what is important with that as well is the reception and interpretation of a character is also dependent on and is a reflection of the viewer and the audience, that like audience members specifically. So maybe you were like already going in like feeling hesitant about Linnea being able to like, you know, properly present autism, and those specific actions like caused you to think it and interpret it in the worst possible way. But a lot of other people didn't see it like that, and the tone and delivery of that section just being so angry and then immediately switching over to Lowen and thirsting over him, which is relatable, don't get me wrong, but and using the character trailer of Lowen in which he like hangs a few people and then stabs a bunch of other persons, and then he like makes a guy like he forces him to play Russian roulette with him. It's it's the weirdness of it, like, you know what I mean? I don't know.
It's instead a reflection on Hoyo that they decided to portray her that way. Everything else about her, I guess I could take or leave. So that is what I should have said about Linnea. Again, I'm so sorry if my comments about her hurt anyone. I should have spoken with more tact and not used the harsh words that I did. Similarly, I have gotten lots of accusations of racism because of what I said about Natlan, specifically about thinking a gladiator plotline would have worked better than the canon plot. I think ultimately for me this comes down to war not working as a divine ideal in concept, which is something I also said in the video, because gladiators was the first thing that came to mind as a way that an Archon could uphold war, just as the other Archons uphold their ideals. This idea had nothing to do with the race or culture of the characters from Natlan, but
Okay, so here's the issue here, is that even if the idea of your expectations of a god of war, hierarchy, that your idea and expectations of a god of war, are divorced and were independent of Natlan and like the cultures that inspired Natlan, the reality is that Natlan itself and the video game cannot be divorced. From the race and the culture of the people that inspired it. And just like in wanting to like see Natlan be like a nation where all the tribes are fighting against each other and their god is like a bloodthirsty, like, you know, war god who pits people against each other, comes off in very bad taste. And again, I think there's a misinterpretation here with war as a divine ideal. It's my interpretation, at least. It's always been about, like, with Natlan's theming, it's the war to fight for things that you love and to keep, like, preserving your culture even despite the centuries of oppression that have erased it and tried to erase it and still are trying to release it in many different parts of the world. That is what comes off in extremely bad taste. And let me see if she mentions anything else about Natlan, because I think that's all she mentions about Natlan.
But I can see how it might have come off that way. And again, I'm sorry for that. A lot of the
Okay, I'll stop you there. Even if you did not intend it to come out that way, it still did. And that's why people were upset. All right, let me see if she says anything else about Natlan, and I'll rewind it for a little bit to go over it again.
Natlan stuff, and also the stuff I said about Nefer, must be viewed in a historical context.
Oh yeah, and this part here where she says it must be viewed in a historical context. So I'm gonna let her finish with Nefer first, because I have the example for Nefer, and then we'll backtrack to Natlan with needing to view Natlan and Nefer and things like that within a historical context.
Like at the end of the last video, I made kind of an offhand comment about how Nefer's plot about receiving discriminatory treatment by the academia kind of falls flat for me, and I realized after seeing a bunch of comments about that too that I should have explained myself more. I wasn't intending to imply that people with pale skin don't experience racism. That's of course something that happens a lot, but Nefer comes from an area in the game where mostly people with tanner skin live, and I know that it's implied that she's not actually from there, but I think the point still stands. In Nefer's story, she gets a chance to study at the academia, but she quickly notices that the assignments that she's been given are easier than her peers. It's obvious from the context clues here that the school sees her as less intelligent because of where she's from. This is based in real life, of course. People of minoritized races, especially black and brown people, have been historically perceived as less intelligent than fair-skinned people. There are countless examples of these groups having their intelligence and humanity undermined through incredibly racist propaganda. It's the fact that they chose Nefer as the character to experience this story out of all the people who live in the desert who have darker skin is what makes it fall flat for me.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop right there. I actually half agree with that, since that was something I actually just did that when I was playing Nefer's quest. I was like, oh, it's kind of funny that, the person, I think she's actually fairer than the NPCs who actually are in the academia. But it wasn't until after that I realized it's not the discrimination Nefer receives is not purely based off of skin color. And this goes back into, so I'm not South Asian, so I can't really speak on that, or Arab or Middle Eastern, but from my knowledge, the academia is based off of the Baghdad House of Wisdom, which essentially operated as like a cosmopolitan knowledge hub that wanted to accumulate knowledge and cultivate it. In, I believe, it would be the Islamic Golden Age around the medieval period. So there's that, and then also Sumeru has a lot of influences of South Asia, like India, and so it was my interpretation that not only is the discrimination that Nefer faces, it's not purely dependent on her skin tone. It involves her gender, her social class, and particularly within I was looking at this through like the context of the caste system in India, since that's what I was familiar with. But I think even with like the Baghdad House of Wisdom, there were still very rigid like social classes and boundaries that limited like what you could learn and how much like education you had access to. But what I at least interpreted with Nefer is that it not only comes down to like her being from the desert, it's like her being from the desert like specifically puts her in like a social caste that is rigidly locked into where she was placed at birth. So it's and this is what happened to, I think, the caste system in India wasn't as rigid when it first started, but it slowly started to become very dependent on the hereditary status. So basically where you were born is where you were stuck. There was like little social mobility, especially to like the upper ones. And so the caste system doesn't exist like legally now in India anymore, but it very much still has like social ramifications and influence, on the social dynamics of India today. And I can't like speak for Indians. So let me know if I'm, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But to me, I always interpreted this as like Nefer also. It doesn't matter how much Nefer can pass. She can be the fairest in the land, but simply because she is born into the lower caste, she is looked down upon, and her access is denied, and you know, she has to climb like way more barriers, and has to leave Sumeru to really like live life that she's comfortable with and doing what she wants, where the social system doesn't exist there. That was my interpretation. And so saying just kind of like the dismissal of that aspect with like a throwaway comment in the original video comes off as dismissive of those important elements of what Nefer's story is like criticizing. And kind of comes off as like speaking over people of color instead of like amplifying voices, if that makes sense. It can it ignores that like important context that I was seeing about it, because there is something actually similar with Mexican and Filipino history. So if you had, and even then blood quantity is like an inherently colonialist concept, but point stands is that if you had any like heritage related to like any indigenous ancestry, like it would put you automatically like at a disadvantage no matter how much you passed as white. Obviously it would be compounded if you didn't pass as white. Your treatment would likely be worse from the get-go, but once they knew you had indigenous ancestry, it didn't matter anymore whether or not you could pass. You were considered tainted, and that's a very gross way of looking at it, but that's how blood quantity, like, that's why blood quantity exists as a colonial concept. And racial hygiene. It hurt. It's so gross to say that word, but that's like what the concept was. So within Mexico specifically, I remember this. There had this like 4x4 chart, or it was like 4x5 chart on all the different combinations you could be depending on the race and ethnicity of your mother and your father. And it was literally numbered like in social class. Let me see if I can find the exact image, because it would be a helpful dynamic. But so it works similarly to like Nefer's story, and what it's calling out is that it didn't matter that she could pass, for being, and she could be fair, she could be the fairest in the land, like Snow White. None of it mattered, because her connection still to the desert people automatically made her lower. And there was just so much rigidity and prejudice in the academia that, like it was perpetuated even despite, and her want to like work even harder just to be seen at the same level of other students is a very common experience with people of color in higher education, particularly in America. I can't really say for China or the other countries, where there's different social dynamics depending on like the ethnic minorities, because I know that India and China both are comprised of many different ethnic groups. It's not just like one, like the way we think about it from the West. So let me see if I can actually find that chart. Okay, I found it. Let me put it into OBS right here. Okay, so this is a painting of all the different castes that existed within Spanish colonized society in the Americas, which also did trickle down to the Philippines. So it still is worth, it still is valid in that case. But I'll show you. Hold on, let me see. This is hanging in a museum in Mexico right now. Let me see, where did that image go? Bruh, what? Wait, desktop. Here we go. Alright, so here's the painting. It's literally like, yeah, it's a 4x4 chart of all the different ethnic like and racial racial mixes that could be, and it literally put them like it's numbered if you look at it closely. Let me see. Yeah, it's literally numbered. So this is one. So so bad, man. But this is real. So it's it didn't matter. It ultimately didn't matter. It was like how much you could pass, you would still be subjected to like the caste system just based off of like what they knew your background was. Um and obviously if you did pass as white, you would have an easier time. But once they figured it out, um especially depending on who was the mother and who was the father, that also really did affect your standing. Because right here we have the father is white and all the very top ones. So white within white with the mestiza, I believe, is this top one. Or if a white mother. And so like that's kind of like where this is coming from. It doesn't matter like if you are like fair and passing, you will still be subjected to these horrible like systems of oppression. And it comes off as dismissive when you like kind of just had it as like an off comment. That's why people found it in poor taste and racist. Was ignoring like these important like social aspects. And that's why people got upset with Natlan as well. I'll double back. Let me rewind the video to when she talks about it.
Actually, black and it's actually from skin. Discriminate Natlan's their ideal in concept. I said about if my comments about her hurt anyone, I should have spoken with more tact and not used the harsh words that I did. Similarly, I have gotten lots of accusations of racism because of what I said about Natlan, specifically about thinking a gladiator plotline would have worked better than the canon plot. I think ultimately for me this comes down to war not working as a divine ideal in concept, which is something I also said in the video.
Yeah.
Because gladiators was the first thing that came to mind as a way that an Archon could uphold war, just as the other Archons uphold their ideals. This idea had nothing to do with the race or culture of the characters from Natlan, but I can see how it might have come off that way.
Yeah. So with that, it's important to like recognize that like Natlan, even if the idea of like the Archon of War should be like in upholding war as like an ideal. Let me
Could
see if
uphold war.
if I can get to that image. So even if like your initial concept and expectations of an Archon of War who has to hold up, let me like fix the window. Why is it like that? Who has to hold up war like that, it doesn't actually change the fact that Natlan is still inextricably linked with the cultures that inspired it, the indigenous cultures, the African cultures, and the cultures from Oceania. And so that's why it was in pretty bad taste to like kind of like, that's why people found it to be in bad taste, was to assert that, even if it was not your intention, but assert that like a gladiator and a warmonger like god who wants to like pit the other tribes against each other. That's why it was in really bad taste. Because with all these like these specific like groups, that's a very like harmful, like damaging racial stereotype that was used to justify colonization. So I'll get into it a little bit. There's an argument I see with the transatlantic slave trade and its history, that is, I think PragerU was the one that I saw do this, and it was so bad. But it was like saying, well, the Africans were doing slavery first, as if that like didn't make the enslavement of like Africans by the European colonizers any better. But part of it, so it seems to like, there's this idea that like all of them are like savages, and they're all like fighting with each other because they're lesser involved. And this mindset carries even now today. I see racist comments on like black cosplayers that piss me off, that like, call them like monkeys, and that shit's like horrible. But that all that stems back to this concept that was used to justify slavery, was that they were less than human, so that's why it's okay to treat them like livestock. That's where the word chattel slavery, like, that's where it comes from. Chattel as in like livestock. And so that's one side. The other side, with the indigenous people of Americas, there's this myth. It's called like the pristine myth, and it essentially the myth is that, or the concept is that the native people in America, actually, what do they prefer to be called? I know that not every person like from like the indigenous groups actually likes being called Native American or indigenous. Sometimes they prefer being called Indian. I really think I gotta look into like what's the right term to use. But essentially, this idea that they lived with the land, but they never had like the same kind of control or the same kind of quote unquote evolve and development as Europe. That they were living with the land, but they were still primitive, and that they were all fighting each other, so they didn't even know how to properly cultivate the land. That's what the pristine myth is. So like the entire nation, despite being lived and populated by for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, it was essentially pristine and untouched by human impact. That's why it's called the pristine myth, and that's what was used to justify colonization. Was saying, it was like, oh, this is because they're clearly like haven't, well, a lot of religion was used to justify it as well, but basically saying like, oh, these people, like, they're not advanced like us, and therefore it is our God-given right to like take the land and exploit it to how we see fit. And this also extends over into like Oceania and the people who lived on like the islands like Hawaii. And so that's why suggesting this, that Natlan would have been better had like the tribes all been fighting with each other instead of being unified, was taken so bad. It's because it incorporates like this kind of like savage stereotype that's been projected onto all three of like the major like regions and ethnic groups that were used to, well, not ethnic groups, just the three regions that came together to inspire Natlan, whereas Oceania, pre-Columbian America, and West African, Sub-Saharan African. All of these together have all faced this specific stereotype, and that's why it became so like offensive to like suggest that was like the better way to go about it. And that was why I actually really liked Natlan, because I was apprehensive that they were going to follow that stereotype. Actually, I talked about it first in the first live stream. Sorry, I have to drink water, otherwise my voice ends up hurting. But yeah, I talked about it in the first stream. So, I was so hesitant about Natlan at first because like, it was, I think, when did they release that it was going to be based off of these three cultures? I believe it was pretty early. It was like, I want to say, it was at least hinted at least with the because the Ansan's character reveal was all the way back into like the Seven Nations trailer back in like 2020, and I forget how far the manga came about. So I was very apprehensive at first because it was the Nation of War and it was like the Nation of Fire, and I was like, oh my god, they're gonna like follow that stereotype, and I was very pleasantly surprised when that they subverted it, and that it was actually pretty well done too. Is because the traveler learns about Natlan externally first from all the other different nations, which are all based on cultures from the old world. The old world basically meaning like pretty much like the other half of the hemisphere of Earth that essentially were the ones that quote unquote discovered the Americas. But we kind of focus on them most when it comes to human history, just because they were the ones who were able to have stuff written down and survive for long enough. And also, a lot of their stuff wasn't destroyed in colonization, so we have their memories going back a longer time. So that's the old world. So all of these Aethers, or Traveler, is learning from all of these different countries that are inspired by old world cultures. That Natlan is like a nation of constant war, and that they're not even fully human. They're in touch with the dragons, and they live side by side with the dragons, this ancient race. Um, and so it's when we actually get into Natlan, we actually find out they're just normal people, and actually they're pretty advanced as well, if not more advanced than Fontaine, um, with some of their technology. And that was part of the reason why I liked them being so advanced, is because it actually works to dispel the pristine myth. How I was talking about that, how there's this concept that oh, they weren't even evolved. They couldn't even like cultivate the land property. Hi, Cass. I just appreciate they make war more of a sport and a competition than anything. Yeah, yeah, because that's actually before the abyss. It is, yeah, because that's what I remember learning about the origin of lacrosse. I forget. I believe it's like the different nations that were in the. I want to say it was like the Upper Great Plains, and because they had enough space to do this. But so the game of lacrosse originates from the Native American people in North America, and they would sometimes play over fields of like, I think 2 miles was like one of the ones that I read about, and it would get like intense. Or in Mexico, I think this was in like the capital city, there's still remnants of it. In Mexico City, there's still remnants of the pyramid, but they have like these little like circles, like kind of these rings that are high up on the walls. And it was a game that like um you hit a ball with your elbow. It's kind of like football, but instead you can only touch the ball with your hands and your arms. Or actually, I don't even think you can touch it with your hands. I think you can only touch it with your elbows. And if you got like the ball into like the tiny tiny ring, which takes a lot of aim and a lot of focus, you would score a point. And I think like serious like debts and conflicts would actually be solved using this game. So fighting, it's not like fighting wasn't important. After all, a lot of these cultures were like hunting, or they did have conflict with each other. Of course, it's just that the wide notion that all of them were all constantly fighting all of each other is actually wrong. The nations and the different peoples were all coexisting in many different types of societies with many different types of social dynamics, positive and negative, for as long as Europe. And so, with also the pristine myth, is that what I liked about Natlan, about them being technologically advanced, is that when like the Europeans came over to the Americas, um, they were like so surprised about actually how much, like, how skilled they were in their engineering and everything like that. And so I'll give the example. The example I used actually was the plant corn itself. Corn, the way it looks now, with a big ass cob, it doesn't look like that naturally. The original wild corn plant is more like a string of like, I want to say like 5 or 6 kernels, and that's it. It was selectively bred over and over thousands of years to get like the corn plant to look how it is now, domestic corn. And the thing about like those plants is that they are very fussy. They need a lot of tending, and they have a lot of mites that like their roots. So they needed like extensive irrigation to be able to have them like grow and be as bountiful as they were to support like the whole empires. Um that's why like maize is like, so staples, a staple of like a lot of different foods all throughout Latin America. Is because like it's kind of, I was kind of like the only starch we had for like the longest time. um and so like there's other examples like the Mississippi culture, which had these huge urban cities, that were all the population died out when the old world diseases, hitched a ride from the boats of the conquistadors and the explorers. Um, and the fact that locals bathe, yeah, yeah, that's what they were like, kind of confused that locals bathed like pretty much daily. So, and I'll give you other examples. So the indigenous people had so much control and understanding of their land that the Great Plains were actually like the Great Plains that we think of as now. And let me see if I can get the book. The book is called Indigenous Peoples History of America. Or Indigenous Peoples History of the United States, written by Let me see. Written by Roxanne Dubar Ortiz. It's on Amazon. And so I had to read this for class. But I remember there is this one specific chapter um, that talked about how they 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 had like engineered essentially the bison population to stay in specific areas by like clearing the forest. And so that's what actually made the Great Plains like the Great Plains, was that it was because of like intentional control of the land. And so, and they also had like, Aztec, the a capital city, what is it, Tenochtitlan, um or Mexico City is today. The cathedral is actually still standing on the pyramid. They just knocked it over. So they all this stuff was like insane. Like the amount. I think actually the city of Tenochtitlan was an island. I think it was an artificial island. Let me see if I can. Let me see. Yeah, so they made floating gardens to help with the um uh, chinampa, I believe is what they are called, to to be able to have enough food to sustain a city that big. So that's why I appreciated Notland actually having like such technological advancements, and the fact that it was connected to the dragons, which are the original people who lived on Teyvat before the Heavenly Principles came in and colonized the planet. I thought was a neat little kind of like nod to the fact that they got their technology independent of the old world cultures that inspired the other nations. They did it entirely on their own with the dragons, which is their like line and connection. So it was always my interpretation that the reason why they look human is because it's kind of like a representation of modern day, where all of us, there's such a mix of all these different populations, mixed together, and then that's why we have such a beautiful like diversity of culture in Latin America today, and Oceania, and in music and in food, in style and fashion and everything. Um, and so I'll give you an example of just how devastating like colonization was. Because it's important to say this, because this is why like I found it so like meaningful to me, at least Notland, is because it was about the war. The war isn't about upholding a war like in the way we think of war, where it's conquering and fighting each other. It's the war of union, joining together and fighting to preserve like your culture and keeping it alive despite everything trying to kill it. And that's what did happen. That's what happened when the colonizing powers came over. I'll just go with what the Spanish did because I'm most familiar with that. But they destroyed so many writings. They built the cathedral by knocking down the pyramid and then building literally over it. Forced conversion, or the boarding schools, where they would kidnap essentially indigenous children and raise them with Western names in boarding schools, and completely try to erase their cultural identity. They tried to get them to like speak English only with each other so that their languages would die out. And so like so many people died from like the diseases and the conquest that it actually caused Earth's temperature to cool down because of the loss of carbon dioxide emission from how many people died. That's how like catastrophic it was. Like really, really think about that. Like it's written into like the rock record that and the written records of temperatures being lower that year as part of the mini ice age, that it coincided with a huge loss of life in just a few years, because that's how bad like it was when the old world diseases wreaked havoc in like the populations of the people who had no chance, because these were viruses that they had never been exposed to because there was an ocean there before. Um So that's why like fighting a war to like keep your culture alive despite everything was so meaningful to me, and why it was so insulting to say that like it would have been better to have Natlan be a country where they're all fighting against each other and their god was a bloodthirsty gladiator combat loving monster who was completely irredeemable. That was your words. And so that's why I found it to be like such in bad taste. Let me look up the actual like cause. Hold on. It's called the Great Dying, the event of like all of those deaths from like the old world diseases, because it was that bad. Let me see if I can find it. Find the article. Yeah, so the abandonment of thorough cleaned land. This is from the BBC. But I remember reading this in the book, An Indigenous People's History of the United States. This was mentioned in it as well, and it just stuck out to me because it was so vivid in its description of it. Like this is how much control they had of the land, and their absence caused global cooling, because they had cleared the land, they had engineered it, when so many people died from smallpox and measles and I think malaria may have also hitched a ride over. I'm not sure on that specific disease, but smallpox definitely did a number. Smallpox and measles were very, very bad. That all of the vegetation that they were keeping back because they were engineering the land for thousands of years growed back really, really fast. And this actually caused the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to be sucked in by all the vegetation that grew back because they had all died and weren't there to keep it up anymore, like keep up the engineering and the cleared land, that it actually caused the atmosphere to cool down, like globally, because there was less carbon dioxide in the atmosphere from all like the tree regrowth. Like that we're talking like that level of scale of being able to engineer like the Americas, North and South America, before Europe ever came, and asserted that this notion that they were less evolved or they were savages and we're helping civilize them. That's why it comes off as so offensive to like suggest that it would have been better had they all been like fighting each other and it would have been a war-torn, ruined land. And I don't think this is like intentional at all. I think it's just maybe just spoken out of ignorance. And so like I kind of understand not like looking at all the different criticisms, because honestly, most of them on TikTok and Twitter are pretty harsh, and I wouldn't want to view it like all these different comments hating on me to try to sort out which ones actually had legitimate criticism in the first place. I kind of understand just like closing Twitter and deleting it. And never going back. You're so valid for that. So that's why like part of this stream is here, because I wanted to actually explain in detail as to why like these takes were reviewed or received so poorly.
Similarly, I have gotten lots of accusations of racism because of what I said about Natlan, specifically about thinking a gladiator plotline would have worked better than the canon plot. I think ultimately for me, this comes down to war not working as a divine ideal in concept, which is something I also said in the video, because gladiators was the first thing that came to mind as a way that an Archon could uphold war, just as the other Archons uphold their ideals. This idea had nothing to do with the race or culture of the characters from Natlan, but I can see how it might have come off that way.
Yeah, so I reiterate the point, even if the original idea of, like a better version of Natlan that you had is divorced from like the cultures and race of the people that inspired Natlan, it doesn't change the fact that like Natlan in and of itself now is unmistakably intertwined with the cultures of the people that inspired it. And so like, even if you had that initial concept and then now layering it on top of Natlan very obviously having those inspirations, and then you saying that we should look at all of this through a historical context while completely ignoring the historical context of all of that, like painful history, is what came off as like ignorant. And I purposefully did not mention skin tones because I'm going to get into that right here.
and again, I'm sorry for that. A lot of the Notlan stuff, and also the stuff I said about Nefer, must be viewed in a historical context.
Yeah. So I spent like what, like an hour? How long did I spend? It was a long ass time just explaining historical context of like these specific characters and why I think you actually flew over the historical context. So that's what like actually prompted me to make this video. Was you saying like we had to look at it through historical context and then kind of forgetting all of the historical context that contributes to this. Oh, hi, Panos. I think an hour and 20 minutes until the... Yeah, how long have you been here? Has everybody been here and just not said anything? Because I feel like I'm talking like a lecture. I feel like I'm talking as a lecture. I'm trying not to be like demeaning though. I think this is generally done out of just ignorance because if you're not like, if you're not aware of this, it probably wasn't even registering. So I don't think it was like malicious at all. But I'm still gonna say it. It came 2 minutes ago because I was eating. Oh, okay. So yeah. So I just went over like, hold on. I'll let this play.
Like at the end of the last video, I made kind of an offhand comment about how Nefer's plot about receiving discriminatory treatment by the academia kind of falls flat for me, and I realized after seeing a bunch of comments about that too that I should have explained myself more. I wasn't intending to imply that people with pale skin don't experience racism. That's of course something that happens a lot, but Nefer comes from an area in the game where mostly people with tanner skin live, and I know that it's implied that she's not actually from there, but I think the point still stands. In Nefer's story, she gets a chance to study at the academia, but she quickly notices that the assignments that she's been given are easier than her peers. It's obvious from the context clues here that the school sees her as less intelligent because of where she's from.
Sorry.
This is based in real life, of course. People of minoritized races, especially black and brown people, have been historically perceived as less intelligent than fair-skinned people. There are countless examples of these groups having their intelligence and humanity undermined through incredibly racist propaganda. It's the fact that they chose Nefer as the character.
Yeah, so with all that historical context I just spent like a lot of time yapping about, you actually ended up undermining the intelligence of all the people that you're claiming to like fight for. That's kind of like the bitter irony here. I don't think it was intentional, but that's how it comes off as. Because like I was explaining earlier, Nefer's like her discrimination she faces at the academia, I think, is not solely linked to just her skin color. It's also linked to her caste and her just racial background, ethnic background, being from the desert, which mirrors like a lot of like societies. Like even if you do pass like as lighter skin, the second they figure out your ancestry and your heritage, it doesn't matter anymore. And also her gender as well. Since there was like, I don't think women were permitted to learn at the Baghdad House of Wisdom back in the medieval period. I think they had to do it secretly. I'm not 100% on that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I do know like in the caste system in India, it was restricted to the highest caste for higher education. The Brahmins. Every white people being hated for having ancestors for minorities. Yeah.
To experience this story out of all the people who live in the desert who have darker skin is what makes it fall flat for me.
And that's what actually I think. So initially I kind of half agree because it does kind of, I poked fun at it when I was like watching the stream. But then I actually like took a second to think about it and I was like, oh wait, actually it still works like with like the layers underneath it.
I don't want the characters I like to experience racism in the game, but
Good.
if Rio is going to try and tackle these themes, I want it to be respectful to the painful history that those themes are inspired by.
It was, you just missed it. It did acknowledge those painful histories in the way it was written. It just didn't reach the level of skin color. And I'll grant it, that is a problem I have with the game. I think that's like that always has been my main issue with Notland. I don't know, Ahoyo could have made her more dark in complexion. It also made it seem like, oh, if you're white, you won't be facing any... It seems to break the, if you're white, you won't be facing any racism. Yeah, because even with, I'll actually explain right now, hold on. Hold on, I need to get water before my voice starts hurting again, like last time. Alright, I'm back. So yeah, so in wanting Hoyo to like be respectful of these very painful histories, you actually ended up undermining the painful histories that were incorporated into the game through your original video. That was what people were upset
Even though
about.
I'm explaining myself a little more clearly, maybe I'm still wrong.
I think you're wrong in some aspects, and I'll explain why here. So it's like the not only like, you know, accidentally perpetuating the propaganda you were claiming to try to fight against
I
right
just
here.
wanted to touch on
go
that
back
to
10
make-
seconds. And again, I don't think any of this was intentional. I'm just
This story, out of all the people who live in the desert who have darker skin, is what makes it fall flat for me. I don't want the characters I like to experience racism in the game,
Let me
but
see
if
it. It's
Hoyo
a
is
little
going
bit
to try
further
and
back.
tax people of where she's from, this academia, the people who live in the desert who have darker skin, is what makes it fall flat for me. I don't want the characters' propaganda.
It's right here.
Historically perceived as less intelligent than fair-skinned people, there are countless examples of these groups having their intelligence and humanity undermined through incredibly racist propaganda.
Yeah, so you actually ended up like accidentally enforcing that propaganda by wanting Natlan to be like war torn. That's the issue here. To those very groups that would like have like their painful history actually kind of well integrated into the game, at least in my opinion. The want and the drive to preserve your culture, to keep it going despite all you've lost, and to not give up your memory and your history because it's so important. That's why Malvika doesn't give the Pyronosis to Capitano. That's why she makes the sacrifices she did. Is because if she like didn't go into the future, it was likely certain that Natlan would have been like destroyed by the Abyss. It's also worth noting that the Abyss, not gonna lie, it feels like a very American view. I don't know if they're American, but they do the focus on the skin color rather than the culture in the background. Continuation of other parts of the world. Yeah. This is actually something I had to learn. Not gonna lie, and I was kind of speaking over people because I'm Latino American, so I grew up in America. I'm very American within my like viewpoints and stuff. So I actually had to take a step back and realize, right, even if I'm upset, and I think it still is justifiable to be upset that like they didn't have tanner skin, it didn't mean that there's not other parts of representation that are just as important to include within the story. Obviously, for me, I would have liked to see like tanner skin, but it doesn't change the fact that like the music to the themes of fighting to save your culture and the unity of your community and the importance of it, and to the fact that the dragons are technologically advanced, and being like a hint to, at least I interpret this as a nod to the fact that they were actually really advanced before Europe showed up, and also the fact that Natlan is not connected to the main ley lines of Irminsul. To me, it was like a very clever interpretation of how, because the ley lines that were originally connected to Irminsul were greatly damaged in the War of the Dragons with the I think it was the Heavenly Principles when they showed up. So the Heavenly Principles fighting the dragons and essentially wiping them from every single nation except for Natlan heavily damaged the ley lines in Natlan, forcing them to make the Night Kingdom as their own like interior way of having their own ley lines. That to me was a very like clear kind of representation of the fact that like so much of the history and so much of the memories was just beaten out and killed and erased as much as possible by the colonizers. That's what they did in Mexico. That's what they did in the Philippines, and that's why like I'll get into a little personal story here. So my dad was telling me this story last night, actually, when I was talking about this. And so he said that he was never told until he was about 22, because my grandfather had kept it hidden as well, that my great grandmother was 100% like fully indigenous from like one of the communities in northern Mexico. Before I pull like a whole Cherokee princess thing, it's not that. I don't claim to be a part of that group for this exact reason. It's because she hid it. And she hid it, she concealed it, because if anybody knew that she was like 100% like from that community, it would have made her life like so much harder. and she would have faced so much more prejudice than already she would have as a short brown Mexican lady. But apparently she could shoot a rifle with like deadly precision. So my dad always said that she was terrifying and she was strong. You didn't fuck with her. But it doesn't change the fact that she saw it as a necessity to actually hide this fact to my grandpa, my dad's dad. And there was this shame that was associated with having that heritage. And so then, following suit, my grandfather then kept it hidden from my dad and all of my aunts and uncles, because my dad has a few siblings. And it wasn't until, because they were living in America at that point, and so, they were also just trying to assimilate into, white American culture, just to try to give their children like the best shot at life. My dad had said that actually they would get upset when he would respond back to his parents, my grandparents, in Spanish. They would get upset because they wanted him to learn English first as his primary language. And so it wasn't until my grandfather had like a marked shift in his like mindset that it wasn't worth trying to throw away all of that he then decided to like kind of embrace the fact that he was half indigenous, and my dad carries it as, those genes forward. And the sad part about it is that it was still erased. Like, oh, fuck, have I been on ads this whole time? Anyways. The saddest part about it is because it was still erased. To this day, we don't know what that group was. Because she was successful. She was successful in burying it. And that just makes me really sad. And that's a direct result of colonization, the horrible history that did end up inspiring Natlan. Hey guys, welcome back. Did you guys end up missing the whole personal story I was telling because I didn't realize there was ads? To give a poignant example as to why I found like Natlan so meaningful. I don't know if ads are over yet. It says it's over on my end. Ah, shit. Anyways, sorry if you guys were in ads when I was telling the whole spiel, but that's why like it was so personal to me. Because there's this whole part of my ancestry that was cut off and was successfully buried out of shame and survival. And I refuse to give my DNA to 23andMe and any of those big corporations. I don't fucking trust them, man. But so it's for me to have to do the digging. I don't even know where to like begin once we hit like certain dead ends, I guess, and trying to like figure this out. Because she did it very well. So like then the assertion of thinking that like, hold on, let me replay this.
It's the fact that they chose Nefer as intelligent than fair-skinned people. There are countless examples of these groups having their intelligence and humanity undermined through incredibly racist propaganda. It's the fact that they chose Nefer as the character to experience this story out of all the people who live in the desert who have darker skin is what makes it fall flat for me. I don't want the characters I like to experience racism in the game, but if Hoyo is going to try and tackle these themes, I want it to be respectful to the painful history that those themes are inspired by.
It was. And you missed that. That's what I found annoying about the original video. Is that it is there through like, the ley lines being totally separate from the rest of the Teyvat. Natlan has to be its own because they were damaged in the war of the Heavenly Principles taking over and colonizing the whole planet, which they were successful in destroying a large chunk of the Abyss and memories. Also, I do note that the Cataclysm was 500 years ago. That's roughly around how much time has passed since Spanish colonization. It was about 500 years ago. That's why like I found it so meaningful that Malvika wanted to go to the future to make sure that like future Natlan could still stay alive and keeping going. Because otherwise, if she wasn't there, it might have been like for certain that they would have completely all perished by an invasion by the Abyss. and the wanting all the tribes to be unified together, and her like essentially being like the glue between all of the different tribes and sustaining it, just like how the sun helps to grow corn, which is why the sun was so important in Aztec infantry. So it fits very well, and representation goes beyond just like the skin color, and ironically I think that's like where you focus the most. And it's not like it isn't important, but I think it's and then the the takes that thinking like it being like a war-torn nation would have been better, kind of like ends up perpetuating a lot of the racist stereotypes, and also like kind of makes that fact that they actually did incorporate a lot of the themes of this very painful history pretty well, at least to me, and it flew right over your head. And it flew over your head again in this follow-up video.
Even though I'm explaining myself a little more clearly.
This is the main reason why I wanted to make this stream, actually, was to explain it all.
Maybe I'm still wrong. I just wanted to touch on that to make my thoughts more obvious, which I should.
And again, let me reiterate again, I don't think it's like intentional. I don't think it was like intentional and that she was trying to purposefully be offensive. I just think it was just spoken out of ignorance. I have to stop speaking from my throat and speaking from my chest. Fuck. Okay.
Also want to address my discussion of the fan service in the game. No, I do not hate revealing designs in principle, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm not attracted to women. There are plenty of revealing designs that I think are really beautiful and well done, and I myself enjoy dressing in cute little outfits.
Okay,
as
so
you can see by the Sony
I'm not going to
design.
attack like the art style because I think that's garbage.
Not attracted to women. There are plenty of revealing designs that I think are really beautiful and well done, and I myself.
Okay, so I'm not gonna like attack like the art style because I think that's like fucking stupid. It doesn't actually get to the point. What I will say is that it's somewhat ironic that a lot of the elements that you were kind of complaining about actually do show up on your character design. I think she actually mentions this right here.
I enjoy dressing in cute little outfits.
It was just like the see-through sleeves, and actually the stockings are really, really cute. I like that. I like the asymmetry. Those are the things. It's like I mean, I like Hoyoverse like designs when they're like done a specific way as well. That's why I have detached sleeves on my character design. All right, we got a lot common there. So I do feel you for this point of people like attacking your character. That's an ad hominem. It's not actually like valid criticism. They're just trying to be assholes. And I think they have an out and a justification to do so.
As you can see by the Sona design that I made that everyone hated. Again, it's partly about agency. Like I said earlier, I can choose to represent myself how I want, and this design is actually pretty close.
And I do think that's valid, is that the characters, like, they're not meant to represent a specific person. They're meant to be marketed and sold. You know, it's different. It's a false comparison to try to like criticize like her character within the same way, because the character that she uses as her avatar in her Sona is like representing herself.
Close to how I dress in real life. But I have also had people coming after me for not taking fan service into account when it comes to the male characters because I didn't mention Lowen. First off, I wrote that video before all of that content came out.
Okay, stop right here. I have to give her my dues for liking Ace Attorney and Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. Just saying, yeah. Sorry, I haven't spoken this long for quite a bit on my streams, so my throat is getting sore. Maybe I'm just getting sick. Alright, so, this part right here, oh, you know what? It might be my fucking chair, because it's, like, making me, like, sit forward. Okay, anyways. Alright, let me rewind.
I basically only knew what he looked like, and I met into account when it comes to the male characters because I didn't mention Lowen. First off,
okay, so oh wait, she'll say it right here.
I wrote that video before all of that content came out.
Okay, so even if you wrote the script before the content came out, in your actual footage, you used footage from Lowen's character trailer. The 3D one. I know people forget, like, kind of, I confuse the teaser and the trailer, alright? But the teaser is the live 2D animated one, the trailer is the 3D one. That contains, like, clips from the game. So all of that content with Lowen was out by the time you published the first video because you put, like, footage of Lowen's, trailer and you had to at least watch the trailer and get that specific clip and then edit it and put it into the video and then presumably watch it over a few times while looking over the video before posting it. And you still didn't kind of like, you still kept in the part where you held Linnea to this weird moral standard, but Lowen does things that are like objectively worse. And it actually has malintent, and you kind of thirsted over him, which I get it. You know, he's hot, I'll say that, but it's it comes off as weird and hypocritical, and that's why people are calling it misogynistic, is because you're holding the female characters to a way different moral standard than the male ones. That's at least one aspect right here.
Basically only knew what he looked like, and I met him in Varka's Quest when I wrote the script, and he had like...
So even if you met, like, you only met him and he had those like 3 lines in Varka's Quest, when you wrote the script, by the time you published the video and had opportunities to edit that out or maybe change what you wanted to say, you didn't. And you kept it in, and you kept in that unfair like standard that you're holding Linnea and Lowen to. That's why people are calling it misogynistic.
3 lines in that quest. The video took a long time to edit, so I couldn't keep up with all of the current content. But I also think it's important to give some more attention to...
Yeah, and I'll give benefit of the doubt. If you didn't have time to play the story quest, or you didn't even watch the trailer, I mean the teaser, not the trailer. Fuck. The teaser, which was the live 2D animated one where he drugs people, or you didn't have time to... you only had time to see his splash art, you still had to watch the character trailer to be able to get the footage that you used in your video. So that means you should have at least seen him hang a few people and play Russian roulette with a guy by force by tying him to a chair. So that is already enough to see like the double standard you're holding these 2 fictional characters to. That's why people don't like it.
The fan servicey elements of the male characters. Lowen enjoys combat and makes these crazy...
Yeah, see, this is from the character trailer.
facial expressions when he fights.
He is hot, though.
Flynn's dialogue
Fuck.
could be interpreted as flirtatious.
It is, and I love Flynn's. Oh my god, you have such good taste here too. I think a lot, like, pretty similar to her in a lot of aspects. That's why I feel upset that, you know, she got so much like coming down on her. And well, I was over the top and dramatic in that first stream, and I wanted to actually be a bit more sincere and serious and empathetic with this one.
And even if it's not, his gentlemanly personality is fan servicey too. Linny wears garters and tights and stuff, and he also gives the traveler a rainbow rose. Goro is a dog boy with a crop top. You can see how it's usually something different with each character, but with the women I feel like it's always the same and very surface level. She has bare legs, therefore she's fan service. She's a tsundere, therefore she's fan service. I don't mind if a character is fan servicey in principle. I actually said in the video that I wished Escoffier would...
Really? I don't think you did say in the video that you wanted Escoffier to be more like Lowen. I think maybe in like the devil horns kind of thing, and like the devil tail with her outline. Maybe I can see that. Anyways, that's a minor thing.
It was more like Lowen in terms of presentation because I thought that would have been more interesting. But it gets boring to see it happen to every new character that they release. It seems like they're more concerned lately with finding not so subtle ways to show more and more skin rather than what would look most interesting or best communicate who the character is.
Okay, so the problem I had is not that you didn't like the fan service, because I think your criticisms actually were legitimate. It was the way you talked about the characters. Specifically Columbina and Verissa. Let me see if I can actually pull up the video itself. It's the tone of voice and delivery was in like that kind of mocking, like high-pitched tone, and that was probably just for like dramatics and entertainment sake, because I overdo my reactions on stream, you know, obviously to get like engagement and everything. But that's why it came off as distasteful, because you were like, rightfully so, gushing over Aoife. But you know, I think I love Aoife, he's hot, but like it was the unfair standard to which you're showing the male characters and the female characters. Yeah, she already did. I already went over the Linnea part. Yeah, that was at the very beginning. That's why this stream is already like 2 hours, because I was going through the clips. Let me see if I could find the fuck, where is it?
Is so much.
All right, let me see if I can actually like not dox myself this time. Hold on, let me fucking put it in studio mode. I gotta be safe. Fuck, I forgot how to like adjust stuff in OBS. Alright. Here, I have the video pulled up. Let me see if I can not fucking dox myself. It was the way and the tone of voice in which you spoke about the female characters that rubbed everybody the wrong way. So I'll go to like that part complaining about Columbina. Let me see. We were talking about like her. Where is it? Here, this part.
Pretending not to see the fan service that is sitting right in front of
Sorry,
them.
that was loud.
She hides behind the traveler when she doesn't know how to talk to people. Aww. She likes to eat snacks. Aww. You get to feed her during moon prayer night while the English VA is moaning into the mic every 2 seconds. Aww. She's so weak. She can't do anything by herself.
This part especially, because not only is this not true in the context of the story of this clip, the mocking voice really did not help your case here. Okay.
Probably would have died if the traveler hadn't rescued her. Aww. People like to pretend that it's somehow misogynistic to point this out.
It's not misogynistic to point it out. It's misogynistic in the way that you're talking and mocking her while praising like the male characters. Like that was what people were rubbed wrong by. Okay, so let's go to Verissa.
To show you what I mean.
Let me see.
Her name comes from.
Let me see.
Know that luchadoras often dress in skinny. What was the point, dude? Why is she so like kawaii themed? She's got hearts and bows everywhere. She wears leg warmers and a cardigan. The skirt is pointless because it's too short to cover her ass. You expect me to believe that this is a lucha libre fighter? I know that luchadoras often dress in similar silhouettes to Veresa's outfit, but they didn't incorporate any elements of the culture that Veresa is inspired by, or the one that her name comes from. There are plenty of lucha libre fighters who incorporate elements of their culture into their costumes. They could have gotten really creative with it.
I think
but
so,
it's
too,
not like
but-
it even matters because we never even get to see her fight like a luchadora in the game. It's all just the food bullshit and falling on her ass all the time. It's especially frustrating because the animators have been getting really
Oh, she
creative
does say right here. I realize these are Lucha Libre moves. I'm talking about more about quest experience.
with the normal attack animations lately. They could have gone crazy with her and made her do insane moves. Something like this. Like I said earlier, I was interested too in Escoffier's design based
I think
on the
this is the part.
silhouette, but I was also very disappointed with this reveal. Not only does
Oh
this
no,
outfit
that's a Scoffier. Where's the part where she was like complaining about her design? Right here.
yeah. I mean, I guess that works too. Just kidding. I hate this design. One of my least favorites in the entire game. I just like... To me, her hair is
Where
the
is it?
only thing about her.
It was like
And I wonder what kind of color
specifically
palette.
when you commented on the splash art with like the mocking voice saying, "Oh wait, you caught me eating." Hold on, which I guess was the more so like an indication of like what the fan servicey part was that you were complaining about, but it was just like the tone of delivery. I think this is like the main issue people had
To
here.
male 5-star characters than many other gacha games because so
Her being a
many
Bulls
gacha
creative
games are
myself, 'cause he's
targeted
Spanish,
at
yeah.
male audiences who aren't perceived as being interested in the male characters. And there were sexy character outfits, especially on the women, lots of detached sleeves, short skirts, also known as the coochie flap.
I do find the coochie flap to be really bad on writing.
high socks or boots.
She's valid for
But
that.
They were nowhere near as bad as they are now. These women are nearly naked now. And not only does that make me mad and uncomfortable from a standpoint of being a woman who feels
I
objectified.
think you are
just by
valid for
looking
that, honestly. It's I get annoyed by like the discrepancy a lot in the game. I make fun of it. It was just the anger and the tone of voice when talking about the female characters, and then none of that really being like relayed to like the male characters. That's why people found it off-putting and misogynistic. It was just very uncomfortable, like when it got like around this part.
People that she's fantasizing about look like
Again,
the reason
I
the myth
don't
of
know how you got
changelings
to that
arose
stretch
in
though,
the first
but
place.
hold on, let me see if I can actually get it. Freaking there, is it right here? God damn it.
And her ass. Veresa's also the same. Plus, she's making that face like,
Yeah, here it is.
oh, you caught me, and I have food all over my face. Oh no! Oh my god. I hated saying that out loud. And see, Lolly is literally squishing her chest so heavily with what? A stuffed animal? A pillow? That is not how this part of the body works. This is only one of the anime fan service tropes that Genshin has increasingly leaned into over time. As the game progresses,
And again, it's like, it does get annoying. It was, I think the part where we were talking about Seat Lolly, like, let me see.
tail against her black skirt. And then when she gets up, she'll like dust
This part
herself
here.
off and be like, owie, that hurt. Shut up.
Just the delivery of it, and I get it because it was probably over exaggerated just for sake of like comedic elements. I mean, it's kind of funny now that I like look back at it, but this, in stark comparison with what you talk about the male characters, is why people were upset.
Mentioning how she literally fights by falling on her ass. When you are playing her, she will fall and her ass will be facing the camera for multiple seconds before she gets up. And your eye is naturally drawn there because of her bright pink tail against her black skirt. And then when she gets up, she'll like dust herself off and be like, owie, that hurt. Shut up.
It was specifically that shut up and the way it's like so much louder and it's like blowing out the mic. That I think was like what made me the most uncomfortable, but I don't think it was intentional. Again, I just think that's why like it came off like the way. So, okay, I'll go back to the video right here.
Or instead, they do what they did to Seat Lolly recently and just reduce her to a childish simp who gets jealous when the traveler hangs out with other people. If
Also,
that's your
wasn't
thing,
she always
that's
kind of
completely
jealous?
fine. We don't have to agree on this. I just find it frustrating knowing that Hoyo can write very interesting characters, but decides that writing stuff like this is more important.
Oh, sorry, I just saw your YouTube comment right here. I feel like she's more willing to look into the depth of the male characters compared to the female characters. I love Lowen and his backstory. I give it as much weight to Seat Lolly's loneliness from a long life. Interesting. I think so. I think it's just the inherent frustration of like, you know, the gender uneven ratio and the fantasy elements. Maybe like going in, you're not as like invested within the female characters, and that's why like the male characters obviously it sticks a little bit more. That's what it does to me. So, you know, felt there, girl. Aoife's booty cheeks are delicious, but it's, and so is Lowen's, but I think that's the point where like people like all the emotional depth of Columbina's story kind of got like sucked out during the review when you're complaining about her, and not meeting like the specific expectations that you originally had in mind, which is fine to like be disappointed with the expectations of Columbina like not being a dark mysterious angel. I'm kind of disappointed by that as well, but it was the kind of the glossing over of like the emotional depth of that story. And then also with Linnea's one, because I think you said like after like Linnea's story quest you still didn't like the character, but that's like more subjective. Except for that crying scene she had with Solano. I thought that was actually really well done, but that's a more subjective thing. But it's like part of the examples. Yeah, and the depth of right here, the depth of Seat Lolly's character being she's so incredibly lonely, because what do you do in that situation when everybody has a normal lifespan except for you? And like, you know, do you get attached just to watch them all die, like one after one after one? It's kind of like a situation with A.
I didn't think it was misogynistic to point out that the women in the game are treated differently than the men.
It wasn't. It was just the way you went about it, the tone and the voice, and also the weird, like, uneven standard you're holding Linnea to versus Lowen. It's that specific part that just threw me off and just gave me such bad whiplash, and a lot of people bad whiplash.
Quite the opposite, actually. But again, maybe I'm the one who's in the wrong. And no, just because I think a villain is interesting does not mean I defend or...
this I agree with. This part, I hate that like people get accused of like being evil and sociopathic just for liking a villain character because they're, a well-written villain character. Why is the window so fucked up like that? There it is. That's better.
Condone their actions. Dotori is an interesting villain with interesting motives, but I obviously do not think that anything he did was right. Dotori isn't even one of my favorite characters or anything. There's actually quite a bit I don't like about the way he's written, but people have always liked villains in other media, so I'm a little confused about where that particular criticism is coming from.
I think it was kind of just it's a stereotype that like people who are Dotori stans like wildly misinterpret Wanderer's character, so I think, and that's become like somewhat of a bad stigma. So maybe that's where it's coming from. that's where at least I was pulling the joke from. I mean, the stream where I said, "Oh, of course, she's the Dotori stan," which okay was kind of not true in my case. So I'll admit that. All right, that wasn't right of me to say that if you weren't even like a Dotori stan. And actually perpetuating that stereotype. So I will concede there. Other Tory fans have a bad habit of excusing his crimes, saying they were for good. Yeah, but Candybbug here doesn't do that. She expressly says in the original video that like all of his actions are heinous. It's just like an interesting psychology to see like where the villain is justifying it from, because they do stem, and that's what makes a compelling villain, is that their relations, or not relationships, their motivations often are very human at its like base root. It's the way they go about it and how they justify their evil actions that makes like such a yeah. Oh, I know. I just wanted to complain about those kinds of things. Oh yeah. I know you knew, Panos, because you were there for the stream. I just think that I wanted to clarify that again verbally, for anybody who's like watching the VOD and who's not watching or looking at the screen while they're listening to me talk, because you need other stuff to do. I do that. So I see you. All right, let's go back.
But I think that's everything I wanted to say regarding the previous video. I also have not been deleting comments, as I've been accused by several people.
That I also accused her of, and I apologize for that. That's not true. Especially after that VOD ended up being published and got a lot more comments on it, just because of, the nature of the discourse. Actually, YouTube would hide the ones that weren't agreeing with me, even if I hearted it or responded to it. I did notice that, and I didn't even have that many comments on my YouTube video. I have like 40, I think, right now. So with like a video with like thousands of comments, I can see like the more negative ones just because of YouTube's like fucked up AI modding system is not making it through to the top, versus the positive ones, at least initially at first when the video came out. It started getting flooded with all sorts of like abusive comments that I don't like, and some that I think do have like legitimate criticisms, but it's obviously I don't expect her to wade through that like hellish swamp of shit just to read the ones that are valid, because deleting Twitter and getting off the internet, that's like a good call right now.
I know you kind of just have to take my word for it, but there are over 7,000 comments on that
I do
video now,
apologize
and
for that.
a very large
like,
amount of them are negative. And that's aside from all the Twitter hate that I'm not looking at because I haven't been on Twitter in years. And just a side note, it's been brought to my attention that someone on Twitter is pretending to be me.
I saw that. That was fucking weird. Whoever's doing that, you're a fucking weirdo, man.
I genuinely cannot believe it's that serious. So if you see anybody called Candybbug on Twitter or TikTok or anywhere else except for Instagram or YouTube, that is not me.
Yeah. Whoever's doing that, fucking stop it. All right, knock it off. You're not funny.
I haven't even really been reading comments recently because it's so overwhelming. I promise you, I do not have time to go deleting comments that disagree with me. If your comment disappeared, it could be for one of the reasons that I'm going to put on screen now. So thank you in advance for giving me grace with this video. I have other ideas for more lighthearted, non-Genshin videos.
And I kind of actually do want to see these ones, honestly. I just think the fact that she just wasn't familiar with the lore of Genshin, I think really did not help her case, because a lot of these things like end up like drawing back to the lore. Like a lot of the reason why Natlan became so meaningful to me was because that's when I started digging into the lore, and I could start making like the parallels between Natlan's like struggle and fight to keep their culture and identity, and relating that to like how like there's still parts of like indigenous culture and the culture that and music that enslaved Africans brought over during the transatlantic slave trade, and that still are here and that have survived despite like colonization and everything like that, and that's why I found it so meaningful. But I had to get like invested in the lore to really understand like more of the symbolism when it came to like the dragons and like the ley line trees and everything like that. So I think that was like that was one of like the worst parts. I think was just the not knowing the lore too much, like miss it, like just not helping your case, I guess would be the way I want to say it.
As I will probably take a break from the game. After all that's happened, I honestly feel like I can't even look at this game the same way anymore.
Yeah, and I feel really bad about that. Because it kind of makes sense for this game to now kind of be linked with a traumatic experience. Because like I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but I really do think like some of the things that they were sending her was fucking out of line. She'll get into it right here. And just horrible and abusive as the internet just does. So it is. I feel very bad about that aspect, and just this the experience of like all of that like overwhelming like force just coming down on you. Um. So I am sorry that like a game that did mean a lot to you has been like irreversibly changed through this experience. That's a very hard thing to grieve, especially when it was getting you through like the pandemic when the world was fucking on fire. You know, just it's got to take some time to like maybe help with like the emotions, like to not be so intense. But it is absolutely valid to like stop playing the game from here. Like don't feel bad for having to do that.
This fandom is so incredibly toxic.
It is.
And I guess I was stupid to think that they wouldn't jump down my throat at every turn.
You're not. All right, this is some of the stuff they did was uncalled for. All right. I didn't think it would like, and I this is why I keep encouraging or keep saying to not fucking harass her or do any like of that shit. I hate that.
I'm also confused because some of you seem to think this is like a psyop. Like
that part. I don't get this part either. I mean, like, I know like gacha tribalism is bad, but like, come on, guys. Like, then again, after like all the shit with Love and Deep Space, I wouldn't. It's unfortunately not out of the realm of possibility anymore. I'll say that, but it definitely didn't feel like that. So
putting this video out for a reason or getting paid to do it instead of it being a video that's not very good because it's my first one where I wanted to talk about my feelings about a game I liked, or that I wanted to get it out before Snezhnaya so that my points wouldn't lose relevance, and because this game comes out with updates faster than I can keep up with, or because I made it about a popular topic so people get recommended it easier. Not everything is some kind of conspiracy. You can feel free to say how much you think I'm a waste of space or whatever.
Yeah, don't do that. That's fucking gross. I hate whoever says that.
I'm probably not going to read it, to be honest. I've gotten enough DMs already
threatening me. And I very much dislike this shit. This is out of line. Completely unacceptable. Don't do that. And this disgusts me just as much. Like, as it would for somebody who supports her. It's so unfortunately common, but it doesn't justify it at all. Like, this is abhorrent.
With violence or doxing or telling me to kill myself. Hence why if you have tried to message me in the last few days, you haven't been able to. I just wanted to take a moment to clarify some of the stuff in the video that drew the most negative attention and that I wish I did better on looking back. That video was rushed because, like I said, I wanted to get it out before Snezhnaya, but it took me so long to write and edit it that it probably wasn't even worth it in the end. But either way, I shouldn't have rushed through it, so I'm sorry for that again. I don't know if it will help
she
to
does,
make this,
like,
but I
do think she legit like feels bad for like, her takes like getting that kind of reception, probably because, like I said, it likely just wasn't malicious. It was just combine the fact with just opinions that just, Colin Beetle lovers and, people who like these characters, of course they're not gonna like agree with takes versus, combined with the fact with that, having takes that just the fandom agrees with, just on general like opinions, and then combined with like the deeper like cultural parts that are actually tied to like the lore, which she admitted that she didn't like read too much, and the video was like probably rushed to get up before Snezhnaya. Like the two of those together made for a very bad combination. I don't think it was intentional though, and I really hope like she comes out of this like okay, because this is definitely like one of my biggest fears is, like doing something like not intentional and it's really bad, and then everybody just, comes down on you, and it's, you know, it's scary. That's why I wanted to be like actually more serious in this stream. I've said that before, but I always reiterate that.
That's the least I can do is try and amend some things. Thank you again if you've said anything nice or if you've been constructive with your criticism. And I'm sorry my first ever video had to go this way. I'm sorry if your nice comment got buried by all of the negativity. Maybe I'll see you soon for a different topic, but I'm honestly not sure after the way this went. Bye.
Yeah. So here, I'll go back to we'll go back. So that was that. All in all, she does seem to have like a good like mindset, at least just acknowledging that there were these positive comments. So I'm just hoping that like she's mentally and physically okay, because some people are fucking freaks and they like do crazy insane shit. But yeah, those were just like my extended thoughts. I no wonder why that like stream was like 5 hours long. It took me 2 hours, almost 3 hours to sit through like a 10-minute video, but I thought it was important to go into detail about some of my points. Since I actually didn't see many people talking about, like, apart from Twitter, but Twitter is very hard to have actual reasonable discussions because just the nature of tweets being as little like characters as possible, and just its algorithm, of course, rewards controversy. But I did want to actually like say that, because on YouTube I didn't really see much like talking about like from a perspective of somebody like who likes Natlan because of like that like kind of like history and that theme of like unity and fighting to preserve your family, what you love, and everything like that, and identity. So it's yeah, but I don't know, I kind of ran out I ran out of words. I did want to go over it, and I don't want to like sincerely say like, please like don't beat yourself up about this. They were they weren't like talking about, this doesn't it may have like been hurtful to people because it just by association, but it wasn't actually like causing real harm to like actual individuals like some other fuck ass creators do, and then they get away with it scot-free. So I think the kind of heat that went down like was totally disproportionate to like just a couple of bad ticks on a video game. But I still wanted to give like those contexts as to like why like there would be like emotion behind that. Doesn't justify like going out of your way and like setting her like abusive comments and stuff. But yeah. Alright, let me see. I may start my stream for Genshin now while I do like all the summer event stuff. But okay, I'll end the stream here on YouTube so I can keep that one like separate from like the other one. Or I may push it to later. Just give me a moment. I just need to like drink some water and take a rest. All right. Thank you guys for coming and at least watching the video and everything like that. I don't know. I thought this one was more important just because of like goddamn, like people were like ruthless. Even though I do think the takes were dumb in the first video, it doesn't justify like the shit that was being sent her way. I just a double check. I need to finish. All right. I'll see you guys in a few if you want to stay for the Genshin fan a little bit later, or the Genshin stream.